in terms of energy exploration? And maybe if you want to say why, since you're shaking your head, why that wouldn't happen. You're just not going to answer.
You're not going to answer this question?
Okay,
Well,
Francis
I'm confident that there'll never be a time when the industry says it's off limits. Whether the government says it's off limits, I think it's much more apt to be kind of a granular case-by-case, location-by-location assessment. And, I think the thing to reflect on in the Arctic, first of all, it's changing radically, which really causes us to try to learn more before we make decisions about it. Also, and we certainly saw this last week with BP making a deal with a Russian company, that there's tremendous interest in the Arctic in every Arctic country. And what we recommend in the Commission report is that a series of international standards for Arctic operations need to be developed and committed to. Not just in the American Arctic where that's important, but in the Canadian, in the Russian, in the Norwegian, in the Danish, Greenland Arctic. If there are indeed oil resources there, there's going to be tremendous pressure worldwide. And, we need to figure out what is this last developed ocean, undeveloped ocean. This is the last ocean that has not been developed because it's been off limits because of the ice. We will have a demand for energy resources forever. We should take the time to really understand what this ocean is, figure out what resources ought to be protected, ought to be off limits, and take the time necessary to ensure we don't jeopardize the well-being of that vast ocean environment because of a short-term need that we have now that we're going to continue to need. So I'm hoping that the recommendations that we make really cause the Interior Department to evaluate the Arctic in a very different way going forward.
Eric, what do you say? You got your own mic.
Of course, we're going to support continued development in the Arctic. If you look ahead to 2035, the Energy Information Administration estimates with significant increases in renewables and low carbon investments that we're still going to need more oil and natural gas than we need today. We have to make sure we're not taking anything off the table so that we can secure our energy future, and not saying that we can become energy independent from a petroleum standpoint, because it's very unlikely. We're importing 60% of our crude today, but the more we're able to utilize our own resources, the more we can become energy secure. So when you look at the U.S. Arctic, right now, all of it is off limits except for the Chukchi and Beaufort Seas. And right now we have limited prospects for exploration, which is just one step to determine what is even there. So we think it's important to make sure we're studying these areas. Approximately 5,000 studies have been done on exploring in the Arctic and what those impacts might be, but at the same time not take this option off the table given the tremendous safeguards being put in place by those companies.
And so we only have a couple minutes more, so I'll ask this last question, but you can either choose to answer it, or if you have any final observations you want to make, although Kim does not get to duck yet again. She doesn't get 2 passes. It has been 40 years since NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Review Act, was signed into law, and one of the first decisions was Gulf oil. What has changed? I know it's kind of a broad question, but I don't know if you can speak to that, or again, if you have any other closing thoughts you might have about where you think we're headed.
What has changed relative to what?
I guess I assume it's saying that the way NEPA is ruling, is determining these decisions.
In our planning, we are required to consider NEPA. We do that. I think that over time, the awareness, and Francis made this point earlier, the awareness of the spill and awareness of environmental issues and conservation issues in general have become obviously more prominent. I think that what's happening is with communities, they are now willing to be a little bit more focused on those kinds of requirements in the early stages of planning and in response.
I would just reflect on, I think that, over the 40 years, and I'm going to sort of take the 40 years, our knowledge and our awareness and commitment to the marine environment as an important resource and benefit to the country has grown. I think it was very significant that it was after the spill that the president adopted the National Ocean Policy that put forth a commitment for coastal and marine spatial planning. I do think that we have to look at our ocean resource in a very different way. You know, it's sort of been, I mean, everyone in this room certainly knows that. That's why you're here. But I don't think the country knows that. I think that the spill actually made the country much more aware of what an amazing marine environment we have and how much it is already put to use. And, you know, witness both the oil and gas industry, the seafood industry, the navigation industry. There is tremendous amount of activity going on in the Gulf and along all our coasts. So, you know, what I hope has changed, and certainly I'm hoping that the spill actually accelerates that, is that we manage our oceans more thoughtfully. We have a concern for their long-term well-being, and we use all available information, and we invest in getting the information necessary to make the decisions on how those many uses operate going forward without conflict.
Yeah, we obviously see NEPA used whenever we have a federal action taking place, and we see volumes and volumes of analysis which drive the decisions we ultimately come up with as, you know, a nation when it comes to, you know, federal decision making. I think the biggest change, frankly, has been in litigation. We are seeing more and more cases every year based upon NEPA to delay federal activity, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's a road, a wind farm, a solar farm. It's just continually used as a tool to delay economic development.
Thanks, and I hope you'll just join me in thanking our three panelists for sharing their time and their insights about where we're headed on this subject.